Let's go. You ever dance with a deadite in the pale moonlight? Shoot some ramps so we can get on with it. The only guarantees in life are death and taxes, and I don't pay taxes, so it's just death. Get this thing loaded, Daddy wants to play. Guns loaded. Wish I was. Oh.
Son of a...
How about a double-barrel breakfast, huh? Mmm.
Gotcha, didn't I, you little sucker?
Ah, this is probably gonna stain. Might have to soak that. Ready? Aim.
Groovy.
Come up! You bash that big ugly deadite. Doesn't matter. Whatever you call it. Bash it.
For God's sake, what happened to our eyes?
Lady, the years have not been kind. Look, I've been locked down there before. It ain't exactly Mardi Gras. Let's see, us versus two dead assholes in a book. I like these odds.
Even now, we have our darling fingers so. Please, Ash, please don't hurt me.
Breakups are never easy. Cabin lock is lit. I wouldn't go in there, but, you know, knock yourself out.
Där hitchhiker dans de rosa. Ganda.
Shut it off.
Ganda.
Shut it off.
Ganda.
Shut it off!
What are you waiting for? You know you want a piece of this.
It's really hard for me to even nail down exactly what I am most excited about in this game because I'm in a fortunate position where I get to be involved in all of the most fun parts of the process, from co-designing the layout with Spooky Loot, writing half the script on the machine, to being involved with the modes and the rules. The role of creative director, I'm just tying all of the things that will best tell the story of the license to the pinball player through the gameplay. When people think of our company and our brand, Spooky Pinball, they think of many things, not even necessarily just spooky. They think of comedy, they think of Halloween, they think of the fall season, they think of horror, they think of all these different things that all combine to make this really special world that we really get to tell perfectly through the Evil Dead Pinball machine.
So how did I get involved with Evil Dead Pinball with Spooky? Well, I programmed one of their previous games, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is the finest cannibalism-related pinball machine ever made. So I was already on that project. They're like, hey, Ben, would you like to do the next one? And I'm like, and they're like, it's Evil Dead. I'm like, oh man, I love Evil Dead. It's like my 15th favorite movie ever. And so I'm like, yeah, I would totally love to do this because not only is it a theme that I love, but I also knew that we'd be able to like do custom speech with Bruce Campbell. And it's always because it's so easy to think of speech for him because, you know, we grew up impersonating him, or Duke Nukem, who also impersonated him. And so that part of it was really fun. And it's also a franchise that I love. So yeah, I've been doing stuff with Spooky for like over 10 years now. So this was just kind of like a natural evolution.
Spooky Pinball, very famous for our dual themes in the past, and we said we wouldn't be doing a dual theme, but you know, maybe that's not necessarily true. Many people may not realize this between the two films here, but The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn are two completely separate, different licensors, and we were very fortunate that both were willing to work together on this project so that we can give you the best possible Evil Dead experience that you could imagine. There's many things about this game that I was excited about, but the thing I'm hands down the most excited about was the opportunity to write the script for Ash's character in this machine, done by none other than Bruce Campbell himself.
The biggest highlight of this game, yeah, it would be writing dialogue for Bruce Campbell. How could it not be? The thing about it was, you know, you have all these lines you always hear him say, but what I've picked up by going through the recordings is when we gave him like these new silly lines to say, it seems like that's had the most enthusiasm. Because think about it, if you're Bruce, you're like, I go to the recording studio. Groovy, hail to the king, right. So it was fun trying to give him new things to say, but also that fit in the spirit of Evil Dead. The stuff that I wrote, I just completely went with that. And, you know, he voiced it, so I must be okay.
Writing for Ashley Williams specifically, the sarcastic, sometimes dumb, sometimes genius character that he is, it just really spoke to me, and I could not wait to write his script. It was over 100 pages of dialogue for Ash alone, and Ben Heck and I would have Zoom calls where we would sit down and go through the modes and just think of the most ridiculous things that we could say, like, oh, so this mode, the Deadites are popping up. What do we want Ash to say? We need 10 variations of things Ash can say when Deadites pop up. And it has my favorite line in the game, which is Ash saying, oh, you've seen this one. It's called 2 Deadites, 1 Chainsaw.
My favorite line, I think Corwin wrote it, was, you must have been a slippery baby. Did you write it? Oh, no, my favorite stupid line that we gave him was, you guys keep saying that, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you. Well, so far all the getting's been gotten by me. Get it? Got it? Good. That's in the game. It's so great.
There's countless amounts of funny lines in this game that I'm very proud of. I hope people find it as humorous as I do. Some of it's pretty dark humor, some of it's poking fun at himself, poking fun at the player. It's just really good fun, and what's really special in this game is his interactions with his girlfriend, Linda, voiced by Laura's Horror Sounds on YouTube. Very big YouTube channel, you should go check it out. The banter between Ash and Linda is especially great because Deadites are very tricky. They're always lying to you, they're saying things to get in your head, and she's saying that to Ash and the player, and he's not having any of it. She'll be giving him a hard time. He's like, just so you know, I'm bringing a new girlfriend to your funeral. And so the banter between the two is just some of the most fun script that I think you're ever going to hear in a pinball machine. What the funny part is I'm very passionate about how the script turned out, but in actuality, I didn't need to do that good of a job of writing it because the lines we would give Bruce, he would riff upon it himself and really make it his own. He brought the full character out into this game, and it would be a simple 5-word line of do this, and he would go on tangents that were just half a minute long. And we of course always offer a family and adult mode in our games so that if the little ones are around, sensitive ears, you can turn that off. But for the full Evil Dead experience, you gotta let Ashley Williams be Ashley Williams. So I recommend turning on the adult mode on this game.
I mean, I like the humor that's in Evil Dead. I think that's super important, especially in that second film. The second film was a perfect balance of horror and humor, and being able to incorporate, you know, through Bruce's callouts, some of that humor into this what is truly a horror theme, and it sets Evil Dead apart from a lot of other horror films, I think.
I think a major thing missing from pinball versus the 90s is humor. That's what I think is great, like to bring the humor back. Like just, even if it's just, oh, it heard me. Bringing the humor back, I think, is really great because at the end of the day, it's like you want to be in a bar, you want to be in your basement, hanging out with your buddies, hanging out with your girlfriend or your grandma, and you want to have fun. And humor is the best medicine.
Theme integration has always been one of the most important things to us at Spooky Pinball, and the best way to have good theme integration is get everything you possibly can from the licenses, getting the actual actors from the film, getting speech from those very notable actors for the game, the best music to fit that, the footage from the film, the sound effects from the film, sculpts to perfectly represent those Deadites and characters from the film, items, objects from the film. All of these things have to come together to give people the theme integration that they deserve on a title like this. It's been nothing but an honor to be a part of this team over the last 4 or 5 years, especially working with my friend Spooky Luke on every single layout, but I really want to give him the largest props for this one yet, as he is the lead designer on this game. I've said it many times, I usually stand there, I give him some goofy ideas, he actually does the hard part of making those things real, and this game is just a masterclass on his ability to do so.
I guess I can't emphasize enough that people have supported us hugely over the years, and when we take that really seriously, when we go out and get these themes, we want to bring them the themes that they're asking for. We want to bring them the mechanisms they're asked for. And a big trend right now is like, we want mech-loaded, theme-integrated games. And I have to make sure too that we get everything we need. And me and Bug work really closely on that too. It's like, we have to make sure they get Bruce Campbell. We have to make sure they get all these things. Taking all of the most important things for the film and being able to turn those into a physical, playable thing. So then we start to look right away at what physical objects do we have to have in the game. And Evil Dead is probably the easiest title we've ever done for that. It's the mechs are so literal. A literal shotgun, an actual cabin. One of my big pet peeves is if you're gonna put something like the cabin in the game, you have to actually be able to get the ball into that cabin to do something. And that's the really cool thing about this is you're gonna be able to lock the balls in the cabin. They come up, they're sitting right on the front porch, and then you have the little porch swing, just lets it go.
My favorite thing is kind of a dumb thing, but it's the swing going back and forth. I mean, super, iconic seeing that cabin in the woods and having that swing rocking back and forth, I think was, just such a cool little moment, but it helps us to bring the player into that, the movie and into the franchise.
There's obviously a lot in this game that I'm very excited about and that I really enjoy about my job in general, but my hands down favorite experience every time is when we know we're starting on a new layout, on a new theme, and me and Spooky Luke get to go into the office and start working on what we want to see happen. And before we do that, we always sit down and watch, consume whatever form of media, movie content, in this case, obviously, The Evil Dead. So we sit down and we start watching the movies just to remember everything, go over what we want to be in the machine. And a bit of an inside joke is that whenever we do this, within the first 3 minutes of the movie, Luke points to something and he's like, that's the thing. That's what we gotta do. That has to be in this game. And in this case, it was the porch swing in the very first movie. They come up to the cabin, the porch swing's just rocking back and forth, hitting the cabin. And Luke points it out, that's the thing. We have to do that in this game. And I was like, dude, chill. Like, we are 3 minutes into this. A lot of stuff's about to happen. Let's just hang on and get through the rest of these movies first, and we'll talk about it more. He's like, no, the porch swing. And lo and behold, the porch swing made it into the game, and it's really cool.
You have the actual shotgun that you're loading the shells into. That was one of the funniest parts right away, actually. I pitched the shotgun to Ben Heck, and I was like, so I want the shell to actually go into the shotgun chamber and then eject back out like it's shooting. And he just looks at me and he goes, that's the only good idea you've ever had.
When I first started getting involved with the Evil Dead Pinball project, I was really pushing for two main things. I was like, it has to have a trap door that the ball goes into, and then the trap door eats the ball. You gotta have things eating balls. And the other thing was like, you have to have a lower playfield. It's Evil Dead. There has to be a basement.
The very first layout aspect that I was begging and pleading Spooky Luke to put in this game was the cellar door to get to the basement. But I had to emphasize, I don't want just a cellar door that opens that you shoot into. We have to make it super dynamic. Cheryl has to also be an option there, so I can be battling Cheryl underneath that cellar door or just going into there. Like, you don't know which one you're going to get when it comes up.
One of the first things that Bug actually brought to me is like, hey, we have to shoot the ball into the trapdoor. You can't have an Evil Dead game and not have an actual trapdoor on the playfield. I'm like, yeah, I think we can make that happen. You also have a drop bank in front of it, so Cheryl can come up, you're gonna be able to hit the targets, knock her down, and then actually shoot behind her physically into the cellar door, which is, can't beat that.
But we did like this magician's trick. So I was like, okay, the trapdoor opens and the ball goes into the trapdoor, and it isn't the same ball that goes into the lower playfield. Sorry guys, spoiler warning. But what it does is it has the ball down at the bottom in the drain part of the lower playfield, and then it's kicked up around this outside hidden orbit, and then it drops in from the top. So it looks like trapdoor, lower playfield. Ash, boom, 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 down the stairs.
Evil Dead was a great game to work on because it is absolutely jam-packed with mechs, and being able to incorporate those all into the rules was fantastic. So shooting the ball into the trap door, seeing Ash and seeing the ball fall into the basement there was just an iconic moment that we wanted to capture in the game.
Theme integration doesn't get any better than when you're actually doing what you say you're doing out loud. So when you're battling Ash's hand in this game, you're actually going to be shooting a ball at his roaming hand. It's not a plastic of a hand with a sticker. It's a hand. It's a severed hand running back and forth on the playfield, which there's nothing more satisfying than saying to Luke out loud, I want a hand that runs back and forth that we can shoot at, and then boom, it exists.
We put it on a stepper motor. We have that thing cruising back and forth. Ben can actually control that where it is. He can move it back and forth down to like the microsecond, so he knows what target is in front of it. You can shoot it with the right flipper, but you also have this sling flipper under the sling plastic, which is gonna be the big kicker. Like, oh my God, they did a sling flipper, right?
And which, speaking of the hand, I remember the day, he had it mocked up, it was in there, we're shooting at it, and we're like, man, it's pretty low on that lower right flipper.
It's a big problem usually. It's like you put a feature all the way on the left side of the game. It's like you're right at the end of the flipper all the time.
We can't drop this feature. It's too cool. We have to hit it. And I took a small break for a second. I stepped out of the office, I hit the bathroom, and I came back into the office, and the right sling plastic was off, and there was a flipper sitting where a sling normally goes. And I look down at it, and I look at Luke, and he's just got this dumb look on his face with his hands out. He's like, "It's a sling flipper." And I looked at it, and I looked at him, and I was like, "Yeah, it's a sling flipper. We'll do that." So even though it kind of starts out almost as a joke, this sling flipper turns out to be so much more dynamic than we ever expected it would have been. So we actually put it on an additional flipper button on the right side, so you can individually control it, or you can set it in the menu settings to just be on both, the same button. When you shoot the right ramp, the ball comes down that habit trail. If you hold it up before it falls, the ball will sit on top of that sling flipper, and you can drop it for a nice controlled shot over to those drop targets, to the hand, and also the left orbit, which also is the 180 ramp that goes to the pop bumpers.
One thing we have to talk about is like, we put an actual pop bumper in a game. And I don't know if that's a secret or if Bug let that out earlier, but we put there's 3 of them. There's 3 pop bumpers in the game in a normal configuration, but getting them is far from normal because you can hit them from a sling flipper, because we weren't just gonna put 3 pop bumpers in and not do something weird. We can't do that. You're gonna shoot it up, hit a 180 ramp right into those 3 pops. The shotgun is super important to this film, and we didn't just have the shotgun loading mech, you can push the shells in, but we also have it kind of tied back to the shooter lane. So you're going to be able to have that dual shooter lane. You have a diverter in the middle, it'll shift to the middle, you can load 2 balls in the shooter lane. You're going to have Ash sitting there, he's going to be telling you wait, 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 and then he's going to tell you when to fire, and you're going to have 2 balls simultaneously fire out of the shooter lane right at the hand. You have things like the evil Linda and then the good side Linda, so she can help you, she can hurt you, and the toy can actually flip back and forth. So you're controlling that as a player in the game. You can turn her evil and she's gonna be working against you. You can turn her good and she's gonna be helping you. As usual, we have to put the apron in the game, right? But we're not just gonna put a normal apron in the game because we can't do that. We have to do something else. So we actually added the tape recorder on the top of the apron. When you have some of these multi-ball buildups, that thing's gonna be going off, flashing, the little reels actually spin. It's cool. Everything from top to bottom is just really integrated in the game. Somehow there's actually 4 ramps in this game, which I just had to count them out in my head there to be able to get to that. On the right, you have a lift ramp. We have the sneaky ramp. We call it the best ramp we've ever made. Right to the right of the Newton ball, there's a small ramp, and it doesn't, it looks like it's going to be too tight to be able to shoot, but it just slides right in there, and it's so smooth. It's coming right back to the flipper. It's really fast.
Then I was like, oh my God, now you guys are adding all sorts of stuff to the game. I can't even lift this game. Look at my noodle arms. So I'm sitting there, and they're like, Ben, you have to do a firmware flash update. I'm like, oh. But you as the customer, look at all the value you're getting. Hundreds of pounds of it.
So after we've tied in all of the music, the sound effects, these amazing mechanism designs with wonderful shots in between them, we have to get down to the modes that interact with all these shots, all these mechanisms. And I had an absolutely wonderful time co-writing many of the rules for this game with Hilton Jones, who also worked with us on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Very fond memories of sitting on Ben's cat hair covered couch together, starting at the top of the modes and working our way down through many of them. Just wonderful collaboration from everybody on the team as a whole.
So Evil Dead Pinball is based on the first 2 movies in the Evil Dead franchise, Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. So in the game, you are playing as Ash, although Ash will speak to you also in the 3rd person. He'll be like, hey, get the lead out, stuff like that. We basically think that you are Ash. But then in the call outs, what we're going to do is we're going to have the professor, like the disembodied tape recorder voice, like, your salvation lies there, up the left ramp. The game will kind of tell you what to do, then Ash usually reacts to what you did, like, hey, get a move on, or, insulting deadites and whatnot. So yeah, you are Ash, but he also talks to you in the 3rd person, so the game kind of does break the 4th wall, but it all seems to fit pretty well. Although it is important that, who is the player?
Everybody has their favorite movie from the Evil Dead franchise. Mine happens to be the first one. I like that real scary stuff. But at the start of the game, you have the choice to select which movie's modes you wish to play. Evil Dead 1, Evil Dead 2.
And then you hit the action button to select. And then on the back box, which kind of looks like a jukebox, I think it's kind of cool with like the 8 modes. The ones on the left are from the first movie, and the 4 on the right are from the second movie. And so once you lock into one, you need to complete those 4 modes. And then once you do complete the 4 modes of one movie, then it will switch to the next movie.
On top of that though, we still have all these very dynamic multi-balls that can stack on top of that, you know, Deadite attacks and boomstick multi-ball and the cabin multi-ball.
So then for the modes themselves, divided up into the 2 movies, we need to think, okay, what are the key points of the movies? What are things that people remember? Ash getting his hand chopped off, people running through the woods, Oldsmobiles driving through the woods. Like, we wanted to base it off the main things.
One of the most important things to me in this game is having all of the different elements come together to really make it feel like the machine is actually alive, just how the items in the Evil Dead universe come alive. One of the most iconic scenes from the entire franchise comes from the second movie, where the cabin starts to come alive and laugh at Ash. This is an experience that I really wanted to make sure we got into the machine, because it is the most Evil Dead thing to me. It just perfectly encapsulates everything that's going on in the series of Ash losing his mind. So when the cabin's coming alive, you know, that deer head looks at him, it's laughing, the lamp is bobbing up and down. We wanted the pinball machine to do this too. The lift ramp is gonna start opening and laughing at you, saying things to you, as well as the cellar door. The pop bumpers are going off, the hand is moving. The game is really coming alive while you're playing it and holding it. And in the insanity mode, as you interact with the Necronomicon, you're going insane. You hit that insanity mode, the game comes alive. You have to shut it all off. You have to calm it all down and get it to stop by hitting those items to get them to stop laughing and doing things to you.
My favorite mode currently in the game is Deadite Multi-Ball, where we have these 2 awesome Deadites that are popping up and essentially blocking your path at the jackpots. So you are trying to constantly knock them down and collect the jackpots behind them, and they're going to keep rising up from the grave and keep blocking your path. It's super interactive and a good use of the mechs and how we're able to incorporate those awesome mechs that are in this game into the rules.
Deadites, the Evil Dead, they're all very tricky. And Linda in the game, she's going to be trying to trick the player all the time. You have Ash there to help you, but she'll be saying things like, Ash, the ball save is on. The ball save's gonna turn on. It's not on. If you drain, they got you. So the Deadites are gonna be tricking you. The Necronomicon's gonna be tricking you. Everything in this game's coming alive and giving you that full insanity experience of the Evil Dead.
But then we also have other sub-wizards based off some of the larger moments in the movie. So like in Evil Dead 2, when he fights Henrietta in the basement, that's its own dedicated multi-ball. There's also a dedicated multi-ball for when his sister gets possessed in the first movie. And then after that, we have like Kandarian Demon sub-wizards, and then of course the wizard mode, but who knows what that is.
You have multiple wizard modes, mini wizard modes, movie modes, multi-balls specific to objects in the game, character multi-balls, insanity modes. There's a lot to be doing in this game.
When you're playing this game and going through the modes, you're going to want to look for the main objectives, which are typically indicated by white arrows or yellow, which is what I tend to use, because you know there's color codes that people expect, you know, like red for jackpot, green for locks. But usually in most of my modes, I also have secondary and tertiary objectives where it's like, okay, well, while you're doing phase 1 of the mode, because I love doing phases, while you're doing phase 1, if you do this other action, you can build the jackpot value for phase 3. Or while you're in phase 2, if you build some other value, then you can enable something for phase 3. So that's what I try to do. And typically, most of the modes have at least 2 phases, and some of them have 3. Some of them have 4. One of the modes in each of the movies is a little bit more deeper and involved. Because I like doing like deep rules, because it's like you're going through a story, right? And I think it's fun, like instead of just like points. Like you should, if, you know, you're adapting a movie, which is a story. The rules should follow that story. Like this happens, then this happens, then this happens. That's a story rather than just jackpot. So when I design the rules, I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the movie. Okay, like, so we're gonna take this scene, let's break it up. Okay, here's this section. Like, for instance, like when, Hello Lover, like when Linda comes out of the grave and she's dancing. Okay, so we have a dancing section. We have a she's biting onto your hand section. And then we have a you're fighting her in the woodshed with the chainsaw section. Phase 1, 2, 3. And then as you're going through those phases, you can do, again, ancillary actions that can build up to the final value. So I like to do that because then you have multiple vectors of scoring. So there's always a way for you to do better in a mode, because you can do things faster, or you can take a risk versus a quick reward, which I guess would also be risk reward. I like to do it so it's like, okay, well, you can shoot something that's very easy in the mode, like, oh, you do something, blah, 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 and then the trap door opens. Oh, so obviously this is my next action to like move on to the next phase. But then you've got 10 seconds, right? But then, oh, what's these little things, like these little lures on the side? Well, if I risk my time and go for those, I can build up a value when I get to the next phase, but I better hurry up and get in there within the 10 seconds to get to that next phase. So yeah, like timed risk reward, I think is really cool. So often you have a code name when you're working on a pinball project, so people can't drive by your window and look inside and say, oh, Evil Dead Pinball. They're probably making Barbie. The code name I came up with was Mean Trees. And I drew a mean tree there. So there's 3 reasons for that. So 1, there's mean trees in Evil Dead. And even I was reading the Evil Dead companion book written back in the day, and one of their trees that they had on set, they called the mean tree. The other reason, my old videographer for when I did YouTube, he always had this idea he wanted to make a video game called Mean Trees. I don't know why. Like this completely random thing, so we would always just talk about it. Oh, how about Mean Trees? And the other reason is Mean Trees can be abbreviated to MT. So the reason I like that is when I was developing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I had a folder on my quick access called like TCM_AV. And I made YouTube videos for my own personal channel, and that folder was clearly visible. So people would either think, okay, they're either doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or maybe that's where he puts his Turner Classic Movies. So I was like, okay, if somehow a screen cap of my Windows Explorer gets out, all they see is game development MT. What is MT? So look forward to playing Mean Trees. Oh, and this is also my my rule book. I wrote it in my diary so I didn't have to remember. So I like to like draw out maps of the playfield on the left, and then I can color code the shots, and then I jot down notes on the right. This mode obviously doesn't have a lot of notes. Then of course it just goes all into code, but yeah, I just do that for every page. That's how I map things out.
So the first thing you see when you walk up to a pinball machine is the artwork, of course. And this game has some very eye-grabbing artwork done by none other than Christopher Franchi himself.
Well, my experience with Evil Dead actually is interesting because Bruce Campbell, the star of the movie, and Sam Raimi, the director, and Robert Tappert, the producer, are all from Michigan. And I worked with them before at a movie they did right after Evil Dead called Crime Wave. I did some set design and set construction for them here in Michigan as well. And not only that, but I grew up with Evil Dead. I love horror movies. I love creature features, Saturday afternoon spook shows. And so I, of course, grew up with Evil Dead. It's been a dream team of mine to work on. And when Spooky came along and said, hey, we're doing Evil Dead, what do you think? I'm like, I'm on it. Actually, Bug will tell a story about how I knew that they were making Evil Dead before anyone else did, and I went up to them and I said, you need to call me. and that's how I got the job. They did call me. As far as art directing this project, I've been in licensing for probably 25, 30 years, not specifically with pinball. But so when we sat down and we talked about it, I talked about it with Bug, and we talked about a direction, I knew exactly where to go.
One thing that's really cool too is just the elevated ability of Christopher Franchi. So he's just so technically good at pinball. He doesn't just, you can have an artist, but it doesn't mean it's a pinball artist. Chris is actually a technically good pinball artist. He knows how to put it in there, and it just makes the whole game look more professional and more well done physically.
What a great over-the-top property to work for pinball. I mean, it's so much fun to draw all of these creatures and things, monsters, and the settings, and the creating a mood. Obviously, you have to create a mood with artwork, and Evil Dead was just it was everything I hoped it would be when I placed it in my dream theme list. Yeah, mood on a pinball machine is an interesting thing because you want people to feel the license that you're working with. But at the same time, you can't make Evil Dead takes place at night, takes place in the forest. I can't just have a black forest all over the playfield. It has to be colorful and exciting. How do you handle that? What colors do you choose? Like I said, I want to set a mood. You can't just rely on the sound. You can't rely on the visuals. As they say, world under glass. So yeah, I want you to really feel Evil Dead when you're playing this game, but I want it to be exciting. I want it to be dramatic. I want it to be colorful. But at the same time, you know, you got to follow rules. You got to fit this in that little notch that says Evil Dead. The style I have and what I usually use in pinball is a very realistic sort of style. And being that Evil Dead has been comic books from time to time, but it's not known for being a comic book. It didn't start off as a comic book. It's a real live-action horror movie, so it needed a style like that, something that's overly stylized or semi-cartoony or comic booky wouldn't really fit this project. It had to have realism and teeth, you know, that would really match the look of the film. So as far as what's appropriate for Evil Dead, you can't just bring like an air of realism to it. You're just drawing video captures from the movie, and you know, let's face it, the Evil Dead color palette is boring, brown, black, dark red, old crunchy leaves, dead wood. That doesn't make for a good pinball machine, not an exciting pinball machine, but you have to keep that. You have to hang on to that, and then you have to exaggerate that. My style, while people would say is just flat out realism, is not. There is a lot of stylization that goes in. If you look really close, you can see it. Sometimes you don't have to look real hard. You know, sometimes I make it a little more obvious. But I have to bring in a sense of action and excitement and color. So a lot of times I could take, you know, I've got a photo reference of a shot of Ash from Evil Dead Part 1 and add sort of like maybe a light blue or a chartreuse or a hot pink backlight that's just lighting up the edges of his hair and all that. Brings color in, keeps the main image true, but it also allows me to expand the color palette in ways that aren't as obvious, a little more subtle. So as far as putting together the complete art package on this project, I always start with the back glass because that leads me to where I'm going to go in all these other realms beside of the back box, cabinet, playfield, plastics, interface, etc. Usually what I do after I do the back glass is we send that in for approval. And if that looks good, then I know that everything else I'm going to do that I've planned is going to be accepted. So I start rolling on the sides of the back box because that's easy, so to speak. Has to be nice bookends for the back glass. You don't want to repeat anything, but that's going to start bringing you down into the cabinet design. From there, I go to the cabinet design, the big pieces. And this particular case was interesting because we had two movies. We had Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn. So one side of the cabinet on the right side is representative of Evil Dead, and the left side is representative of Evil Dead Part 2 Dead by Dawn. And then the playfield is sort of a mixture. The reason why we save the playfield for last is because they're usually working on it until the last minute. So there's going to be changes. This is going to move. That's going to move. I don't want to do a whole bunch of artwork and then have to redo the whole thing because stuff changed. So save that for last. That's the longest process too. So it's nice to get everything else done. And then we got a nice little cozy wrap that we can snuggle inside of for the next 6 months to finish the project and know where the art direction is. Once we get to the playfield, it's playfield and then plastics and all that. And once I'm all done and everything gets approved, I then start working on the interface, in this case, with Ben Heck, designing and doing illustrations and all that he can animate and turn into ball save, match, etc. And then because Spooky is the company that they are, and they have the trust in me that they do, I've also expanded into doing the flyers and doing the promotional images and setting up promotional opportunities and things like that with other partners and all that. So I'm sort of going in that direction now as well as we approach the big release of this game. And that's pretty much the timeline. As far as creating the art for the playfield, there's so many things to take into consideration. Number one, you want to draw people in. You want them to see something really dynamic when they walk up to the game, and there it is all lit up, you know, just world under glass, pull you right in. Another thing that I have to do, my job as a playfield designer, is to market each little shot. That's what I call it anyway. If you've got an orbit shot and you know it's like the out in the woods orbit shot, well, how do I market that? I have to explain to you visually what that is, whether it's just artwork or artwork in words. So each little feature has to be marketed as their own separate little thing. A lot of times you don't want to give a lot of stuff away. Like this game has a lot of surprises on it. You want to lead them right up to that surprise and then let the game take over from there. This license in particular was so manic and crazy and over the top that it was hard to try and keep. I don't want to say it was hard to try. It wasn't hard to try and keep organization. It didn't require organization. It was better if it was just you looked down and your head just kind of swirled, like there's these monsters and these settings and all of this crazy stuff going on, and you don't feel like your feet are firmly planted in front of all of this. You feel like you're swirling around in it, and that was really important for this. I didn't want you to look down and go, well, everything's neatly organized, and no, I want you to look down and go, ah. So hopefully you look down and go, ah, and but it'll work. That's what I want. That's how I want you to react. I want you to have that emotion when you look at the artwork, because that's what the artwork needs to do. It needs to bring you in, it needs to make you feel. And then on top of that, it needs to make you see what you need to do. It needs to sort of teach you along with what's on the screen and the call outs and etc. So that's basically how I approached this particular design. Was, you're falling off a cliff into a vortex and you have lost control and you have to do your best while you're swirling through this nightmare. And the reason we chose this direction was obviously because you're playing as the character of Ash. And if you follow the movies, you know that Ash kind of starts off like an average Joe Schmo like you and I, and then he turns into the superhero at the end of the movie. So you have to follow that progress with him. You're thrown into a world you know nothing about, and you're trying to understand it, you're trying to overcome it, and you're trying to build your character as you get through these different features, so that by the time you get to the end and you get to the wizard mode, you got your boomstick, you got your chainsaw, you are Ash, and you're going to kick some ass.
Chris's knowledge and love for the Evil Dead license really shines through this game. The Easter eggs that he finds down to the most minute details that, unless somebody came up and told you that that's why that's there, you would have no idea why that's there. He did not leave a single stone unturned on this game. He made sure everything had a purpose and a very specific reason for being there. Just hands down the perfect artist for this machine.
Whenever anyone asks me what I do for a job, I say, well, these days I program pinball machines in Unity Game Engine. And they're like, Unity Game Engine? Why do you need that for a pinball? And I'm like, well, because all the pinballs have these big LCD screens now, which is too bad, because otherwise you could run a pinball machine off a stopwatch. But here we are. To fill up that screen, we not only have great movie clips from the series itself, but we're also creating custom artwork with the help of Christopher Franchi.
With the crude amount of tools that I gave him to work with. So it was really impressive. Unfortunately for him, that steps it up for me. I'm like, well, if he can do that, I'm going to give him some more hard stuff. As far as working with Ben Heck on the animations, it was pretty interesting because a lot of the stuff was up in the air. He was open for suggestions. He did come to me with a lot of needs, and I executed those for him. But one thing that really stands out is I remember in the movie, in Evil Dead Part 2, Dead by Dawn, there's a scene where Linda, Ash's girlfriend, pulls herself out of the ground, and she's a skeleton, and she starts doing this dance. And Ben calls me up, and he says, hey, I want to do an animation with this. Like, is there any way you can give me artwork to animate this? And the first thing I thought was like, well, I don't do 3D modeling. And it's a skeleton. Wow. So I said, if you want like a 3/4 shot where she's standing up and she's got a leg kicked out and her arms out, I can draw that, and I can draw each bone individually. You can anchor those points and animate it, and hopefully that'll get you what you want. It was the best thing I could think of. And he took that and he made this amazing animation that looks just like the movie. And honestly, it stepped up what I was given to him, because I said, well, I didn't know the limitations of his animation skills, but if he can do that, well, here it comes, boy. And I unloaded all kinds of cool shit on him.
So here's how it works with the animation with Chris Franchi. So I'll take my notebook, I'll draw something out very crudely, then I'll very crudely take a photo of that with my phone, and then I will text it to him. So for the random selection award, I'll be like, okay, I want a gun in the foreground, kind of like Doom, and then the awards will slide by here, And then I want there to be an arm piece, a gun piece, and a background. So when the gun fires, it moves separately from the arm. Then we'll argue about it for a while. Then he'll send me a file that's like 9,000 by 6,000 pixels. And I'll be like, oh, well, this is a lot of resolution. Which is good because if you need to, like, you can zoom in. I mean, you can zoom in quite a ways. Chris will send me a file because he loves talking on the phone, which I hate because I guess I'm like a millennial at heart. And then what I like about it is as I go through each game, I'm always putting in new tricks. Like this one, we have like a 3-dimensional book. It's like, oh yeah, we can turn the pages of the Book of the Dead and stuff. And that's fun. So I'm trying to push that forward all the time as well. And I think we have some really nice looking displays on this game. We got lots of detail, lots of art, lots of cool humor, all for you, the consumer, to look at. So I did all of the sound effect design on Texas Chainsaw, and then I'm doing it again on Evil Dead. I used to be into independent film, and I've done podcasts, and I was a professional YouTuber, so I get it. And I can do that stuff. And then they don't have to ask someone else to do it. It's like, oh, Ben can do it, right? So I think it's fun to do sound effects. My favorite part is mixing together. I mean, you should always mix together different sounds, right? So I like to think, okay, well, what can I sneak in there? And they'll be like, what, you use that for a sound effect? And it's always fun. Like, you know, if you have like bowling pins being knocked over, which is like a huge cliche, and you hear it all the time in Disney movies. So sometimes there'll be a little bit of that. You want to have a sharp sound, and then you have like the body of the sound, and then you have like the aftermath of the sound or the bass. And I like to work on that. I'm still working on having like the best shotgun sound for this game because I got to think, oh, is it a single barrel being fired? Is it both barrels being fired? So you're going to have two different sounds for the shotgun. And then, yeah, I think, well, just like Texas Chainsaw, I like to make the game as visceral as possible. Like audio is so important for that because like you can feel the game and you can have like the screams and like, you know, like people being terrified and stuff. I think that's really important. And then also I think about this like at shows because shows are a big part of selling games. Like TNA was a perfect example. Like you could hear that game from a mile away and you're like, oh, that's TNA. And that's why I like to have really distinct sounds like ding, boom. They're like, oh, that's, hopefully people will be like, oh, that's Evil Dead. It's got this one sound. And here's the part I always like to bring up. I was like 12 years ago, I was living in Verona, Wisconsin, and I was moving out of this apartment to go move to the east side of Madison, and it had these really cool windows, and they were spring loaded. So there was springs on either side, like, and they'd be compressed or expanded based off the windows open or close. And it was like, and I was like, oh man, I love the way these sound. I'm going to record this before I move. So on the last day I did that. And I've actually managed to work that into Evil Dead in several places. So a lot of the sound effects in this game are spring-loaded windows. And there's another sound effect I worked in. I'm not even going to mention it because you would be like, if they knew I put it in there, they'd tell me to take it out. But I'll wait until after it's shipped and I'll tell them what interesting sound source is used for one of the modes.
Let's talk about the models of this game. So I should say model. So there's a big change coming here. We're doing one model of this game. It's going to be a limited number still. We loved offering all the models and everything, but it just seemed to get, everybody loved buying that top model anyway. Our CE was such a good value. Our CE is still under $10,000. We're bringing all of those add-ons. We're bringing add-ons that other companies don't even do into the CE, and we're just including it. With us going to one model and one model only, a big part is people are like, are you still going to include the topper? You're still going to get that beautiful multiple layer topper with the custom art on it and everything like that. That will be included in our CE package as well. But there's a change.
This time around, we have an optional accessory topper that you can purchase for your game as well.
It's a huge sculpted masterpiece. You can see it right behind me. It's right there. It's looking at us.
So when you purchase your Evil Dead Pinball machine, and I know you will, you have two options in your cart after you make your purchase. You have the direct print butter cabinet, which we've become very famous for, and of course the additional topper.
We're going to have that available at launch. So you're going to be able to get that option right away. It's going to ship with your game. You're going to get it right away. You don't have to wait for it. It's not coming later or anything like that. You're going to be able to pick that out as an option and have it.
So we were very fortunate to work with horror special makeup effects artist Gary Tunnicliffe, very notable for the Hellraiser series in the 90s and a ton of horror movies throughout the 2000s. And he designed this Cheryl topper. I proposed this concept to him of Cheryl on top of the actual game with the cellar door above her head, and she's sitting up there and she's yelling and screaming things at you and moving and popping it up and down. And I honestly thought I was overdoing it. I thought I was like asking for too much. It would be too crazy, too expensive, all these things. And He sent the sketch back, he thought he could do it pretty easy, and on top of that, he's a really damn good effects artist. There's never been a topper quite like this in pinball. The convincing effect that it has, where it really does look like she is hidden in that cellar and crawling out of the top of your game.
She's doing it. She's doing the thing right now. It's kind of making me nervous.
From the detail of the dirt under the fingernails, the glossy eyes, the bent nails in the wood boards on this topper, it has to be the most detailed topper that there has ever been, and you really need to get up close and personal with it to experience that for yourself.
The topper's terrifying, by the way. It's actually terrifying. Like, it scares me. Oh man, this is always the hardest part. Now I have to list all the options, and we're gonna sit here and do 10 takes of this while I try to list them in order. So we got the powder coated legs as usual. The whole armor package, I should say, is just totally powder coated. We got the custom cut side rails like we always have. We got lighted flipper buttons, lighted action button to go with that. Everything's lighted in these games. Lighted speaker grills we got with the custom laser cut cutouts on that. The knocker and shaker in the game, like we always do. We include a real knocker still. Oh yeah, we have the custom start and launch button as well. Franchi did art for even the start and launch button. On your powder coated coin door, you have that magnet that's on there. We just include art for everything because there needs to be art on every surface, you know? We have the interior graphics. Speaking of art, we always include those with our games. We've added magnetic art to the apron and the speaker panel. We got that CE plaque up there. Always do a nice custom CE plaque for the games. We print a real back glass in our games. It feels real. It has a full quality on the back. You don't have some kind of wrinkle or weird translator or anything like that. You got a real back glass. Another thing we've really improved is our motors. So the hand is actually running on a stepper motor. We brought in a nice big beefy stepper motor, and that thing's gonna be really robust for everyone, I think. It also allows Ben to do really precise controls of what that hand is doing. Just reverse them back and forth, do all kinds of crazy things. And that actually transfers to the topper as well. We went with like a full gearbox motor, super robust. It's quiet too. It's even quiet. It's huge, but it's quiet, unlike me. But we actually designed these pointed GIs, and the shape that you do on those, it disperses the light really even pattern. So you get this cool color RGB effect that's displayed perfectly evenly across the plastic that it's underneath or the general area around it. We tried a bunch of different shapes. We tried the round dome for them. We tried like points and everything like that. And what we settled on was this perfectly pointed cone. It just disperses the light evenly around there, but it's got some ridges in it that make it, Greg actually thought it was a flame. He's like, did you make cute little flaming candle GIs? And I was like, no, that's just an RGB effect. A lot of people probably don't notice, but little things like that, we're always trying to improve and just make better. It just makes the light shows better. And Luke makes some killer light shows for this game. So we've kind of refined almost like Spooky Phase 3, we're kind of saying. So it's like we've upgraded so much more of our equipment, and our capabilities are just getting higher and higher in the engineering department. Physically, the game is just, it's so nice.
All of our previous games have felt like they really had a central focus, whether that was flow or sculpts, like the spectacle of it. What I really feel strongly about with the Evil Dead is this feels like the culmination of all of those things together. It feels like every time we've had a central focus, all of those things have been combined now to make the actual perfect spooky pinball experience on a machine.
We've just gained so much experience over the last 4 or 5 years here, and I feel like this game is just such a culmination of tying together. We've upgraded our equipment, we've upgraded our engineering, we have these great people and talents that we work with, and we're kind of all putting it together, and this just really feels like we've put it together. Like this is kind of just that next phase where it all came together, and it's just our best work yet.
You know, when everybody's happy and everybody's at the top of their game and everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing and happy to be doing it, it shows in the end result. You know, you look at one of their pinball machines and all you see is perfection from top to bottom, and care and effort, and like it's all there. It speaks for itself. It's just a fantastic game.
I'm sitting here, I keep looking over my shoulder at all the different features. I could talk about it for hours. It does not feel like I'm ever gonna have enough time to talk about all the different things in this game. So at this point, the game's going to have to just speak for itself, which it metaphorically and literally does speak for itself. Yeah, she's saying yes, yes.
Well, like anything, at the end of the day, it's night. Well, at the end of the day, you know, so much love and care has gone into this game that there's no way you can't love this game. It is packed. Don't be afraid. I know the topper's kind of scary. There's a scare and a thrill around every corner of this game. It is so much fun to play. There's so much going on. It's so perfect for Evil Dead.
We are obviously working on these games well in advance, and you know, it's all in secret. And finally being able to talk about Evil Dead and that we are bringing it to the pinball world is just crazy exciting, and I can't wait for everyone to play it.
It's just the best overall game we've ever made. It just is. It's really the best overall game we've made. The experience and the time and the people, I think the talents, they've all just come together, and it's just the best freaking thing we've ever done, man.
I'm really looking forward to people getting a chance to play Evil Dead Pinball from Spooky. It's been a blast working on it, and I hope people enjoy playing it as much as I've enjoyed making it.
I'm to a point where I don't know how to express further our love and pride that we have in this game other than by saying this is our love letter to pinball. This is what pinball means to us. This is Spooky Pinball as a machine. And when you get your hands on it for yourself, dude, it's a boomstick that is absolutely going to blow you away, and you will understand exactly what I'm saying here. So thank you, everybody.
I saw the outtakes last time. You guys did me dirty.
Hi, I'm Ben. I work from home, so I don't have to deal with these guys most of the time. And also I can pick my nose and no one can see it.
Cue the stone cold music. Stone cold crazy, you know.
Do I look beautiful? Oh. Yeah, so that's the thing. I'm not a small man.
Wait, not your hot mom? His mom is really hot. There, did you get that on tape? I, Benjamin J. Heckendorn, hereby decree that Lucas Kastner's mom is hot.
You will die like the others before you. One by one, we will take you.
Hey, so I'm Spooky Luke. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Spooky Pinball. That's it, I guess.
I thought you were on your fourth stepdad. Oh wait, no. Dad, stepdad, stepdad, stepdad.
I meme out all day, every day, and people pay me for it.
You don't have to apologize for unfettered capitalism to me.
Well, yes, thank you.
Hey, I'm Spooky Luke, and this is gonna take me a second.
That's what she said.
Yes, do the featurette. I'm not like other girls.
Inside that physical sculpted hand, there's a switch in there. I feel bad for how much you have to edit mine.
Oh, I never feel like I say the wrong thing. People might think I did, but I don't.
Dude, look at that spider. Do you see how big that thing is? Yeah. Dude, don't kill it. He's fine. He's not hurting anybody. Oh. That's someone's mother.
Join us.
Lucas, I will be a stern but fair stepdad.
Yeah, so I should say, that's good. That's actually good.
and done.
Had to break the fourth wall there. I was looking in the lens too much. Can I start over?
Okay, yeah.
I felt I was being a little too fourth wall-y, like I'm a televangelist. I will save your soul.
Look, I feel like I'm in a recording studio and you're like in your little booth. Yep. You know, because I can't hear you. I don't know if you mute your mic or what, but I just see you laughing and moving around and all that. And I feel like Davy Jones on the, girl, look what you've done. Is that good, guys? Do I sound good?
A huge smile on your...
No, don't bite your finger.
Okay, let's be done.
Yeah, I just do that for every page. That's how I map things out. And then when it's done, I'll give this to Bug. Here. I mailed this to my son. Junior! What are you doing here, Junior?
What's it like working with Ben Heck? Well, mostly listening to Ben do voices and sound effects, and I'm kind of rambling on.
Don't wait to buy gold and wait, especially now. You guys bring up some pot and, oh wait, it's not this recording. There you go, FBI, it's on tape. Oh, I love a rainy night. I love a rainy night. I love to hear the vipers. Okay. We can't let this fall into Jersey Jack's hands. The stern armies of darkness will march across the planet.